Good morning, Lisa Boyd here. Welcome to an online civil rights training presented by Second Harvest Heartland. If your agency is eligible to order TFAP commodities from us, then this training is required on an annual basis for at least one key staff or volunteer at your organization. Beginning March 1st, 2015, it is also required annually for all other emergency food program partners. As we go through the slides, I'm going to read through each one for those who learn through listening. I will also add some comments for most slides. Food and Nutrition Service 113-1 Overview. Collection of civil rights requirements for food and nutrition service nutrition programs. Here is the website. It contains references, definitions, and responsibilities. Some rules apply to all programs. TFAP-specific rules are covered in Appendix C. If you would like more detailed information on the federal requirements for civil rights training for organizations that receive federal assistance through the USDA, you can find it in the document that's referenced on this page. The Food and Nutrition Service Circular 113-1. The web link is included on this page. Responsibilities for civil rights, U.S. Department of Justice, federal departments, USDA, federal agencies, Food and Nutrition Service, recipients of federal financial assistance, state and local providers. Each of us is responsible for undergoing regular civil rights training and maintaining good civil rights practices at every level, from the Department of Justice to USDA to Second Harvest Heartland to your agency, because it is federal assistance in the form of TFAP, which you distribute to your clients. It's also a good practice for any emergency food program, which is why Second Harvest Heartland has now made it a requirement for partnership. Federal financial assistance. Anything of value received from the federal government includes cash grants, commodities, training, excess computers, loans, property donations, and other goods and services provided with federal funds. So federal financial assistance can either be a cash grant or the grant of USDA commodities through the Emergency Food Assistance Program, otherwise known as TFAP, or any type of assistance mentioned here. TFAP commodities constitute federal financial assistance. Acceptance of federal financial assistance requires the recipient of the assistance, no matter how minimal, to assure compliance with federal civil rights laws and requirements. This is important for agencies that distribute TFAP in their programs to understand. This is federal financial assistance. So let's start with a scenario to better understand civil rights requirements associated with federal assistance. The Archdiocese of a city runs a number of different programs. It accepts federal funding and commodities to run the Commodities Supplemental Food Program. It also operates food pantries that are stocked and funded entirely by parish donations without federal commodities or other funding. Do the pantries have to adhere to federal civil rights rules? Answer: yes. Acceptance of federal financial assistance obligates the recipient to adhere to federal civil rights requirements in all aspects of its operations. Also, if discrimination is found and the recipient of the federal financial assistance refuses or fails to correct the problem, federal assistance from all sources, that is, all federal agencies that provide assistance, needs to cease. So your agency must follow civil rights requirements throughout your operation if you receive any federal assistance for any of your programs. And if your agency refuses to correct any identified civil rights violations, you could lose all forms of federal assistance from any agency. However, at Second Harvest Heartland, our goal is always to work with you to correct any problems that may arise. Here are the main goals for establishing good civil rights practices. equal, fair, and respectful treatment of all applicants and beneficiaries, elimination of illegal barriers that prevent or deter people from receiving benefits, knowledge of rights and responsibilities. We understand that these requirements can sometimes feel burdensome, but at a basic level they are designed to ensure fairness and reduce barriers that some people may face in trying to access food assistance. It's also very important to ensure that your clients understand their rights when using your program. Types of discrimination. Disparate treatment. Because of protected class, someone is treated differently. May sue the agency. Disparate impact. Discriminatory result on a protected class results from action or rule. Appeal to federal agency. Reprisal, retaliation. Negative treatment due to prior civil rights activity by an individual or his or her family or known associates, or for cooperating with an investigation. May sue the agency. Discrimination can involve more than just treating a particular group of people differently. An agency could accidentally affect a protected class of people by setting up a rule at their program that impacts this group negatively compared to others. This is disparate impact. Also, any kind of retaliation against someone who makes a civil rights complaint is discrimination. Your agency and its programs should have a clear and simple way for any client to file a grievance. We'll talk more about that later. Here is another scenario that addresses possible discrimination. An Asian woman filed a complaint with the state that the commodity boxes looked shabby. She tells you that ever since then, the delivery people have been coming later in the day and are no longer friendly. Is this a discrimination complaint? And if so, what kind, and how should it be handled? Answer. Unless she is alleging that everyone in the Asian community receives commodities of inferior quality, or that she is being treated differently because she is a member of a protected class, this would not be a valid civil rights complaint and should be handled as a program complaint. In order to qualify as retaliation, the person must have engaged in prior civil rights activity. So in this case, it's probably not discrimination unless she can show that only people in her group were affected. If she's just complaining about the quality of the program overall, this is not civil rights activity. If her complaint about shabby boxes alleged that she received them because she was being singled out for bad treatment because of her race, color, national origin, age, sex, or disability, or other protected classes, that they received shabby boxes while others received something better, that would not qualify as prior civil rights activity. While part of civil rights includes providing good customer service, failure to do so, unless it's related to a protected class, does not qualify as a civil rights complaint. Responsibilities. Compliance with civil rights laws, regulations, and requirements. Training. Other language services. Equal treatment for religious organizations. Public notification. Data collection and reporting. Compliance reviews. Complaint processing. Accommodating persons with disabilities. Resolving conflicts. And customer service. Good civil rights practices include not only treatment of clients that is inclusive, not discriminatory, but also ensuring that you are able to serve people who may have disabilities or may not speak English, making sure you're doing outreach and publicizing your program so that anyone who is eligible knows how to access it, providing the same level of customer service to all your clients regardless of their background, having clear or simple procedures for grievances and conflict resolution. Second Harvest Heartland is also required to treat agency partners fairly, and there are specific rules to accommodate partnerships with religious organizations. More on that in a moment. Other requirements include regular reporting of statistics to Second Harvest Heartland, so we can collect data about the amount of food service you're doing and biannual monitoring visits or compliance reviews. Limited English Proficiency, or LEP. National Origin Discrimination violating Title VI of Civil Rights Act of 1964. People with limited English proficiency, LEP, need to be served in other languages. Generally, service must be provided, flexibility in how it is provided. Working with people with limited English proficiency can be especially challenging for a small volunteer-run organization with tight resources. Nevertheless, if people who have come here from other countries cannot get the same level of service as anyone else because of the difficulty of communicating with them, this is discriminatory. The burden is on us to provide the service and accommodation they need so they can receive food assistance like anyone else. We will discuss some ways in which you can accommodate these clients. Limited English proficiency continued. How service is provided depends upon number and proportion of LEP persons served or encountered in an eligible population, frequency of LEP persons' contact with program, nature and importance of program, activity, or service, and resources available and costs. Shortage of resources does not eliminate requirement except in cases of extreme hardship. In creating a plan to serve LEP clients, think about which groups you are typically serving. For example, are you serving an increasing number of Somali clients, Spanish speakers? What type of information do they need the most? Are they coming to your food shelf where they will need to read and sign forms that would be best presented in their own language? What resources do you have available to accommodate these clients? Do you have volunteers who can provide interpreting or translation of documents? Remember, you're expected to find a way to accommodate these clients even if you do not have a large budget to do so. Limited English proficiency continued. Volunteers may be used, but make sure they understand interpreter ethics, particularly confidentiality. Children should not be used as interpreters. See www.lep.gov for resources and information. If you're using volunteers for interpreting conversations or translating documents, make sure they have a good understanding of confidentiality, right to privacy, and other good civil rights practices at your agency. Do not use children as interpreters. They may not have the vocabulary to explain something like lactose intolerance. Or their parent may want to tell you something they are not comfortable with their children hearing, like, I need you to give me some feminine hygiene products. Guidance on creating an LEP plan can be found on the website listed here. Also, Second Harvest now has an approved template available, which you can use to create a written LEP plan. We will send this out after the training, and it's available on our agency's own website. Here is a scenario about dealing with non-English speakers. In order to ensure that there are interpreters available, a food pantry wants to mandate that all Ukrainian-speaking participants be served on the second Friday of each month. Is this allowable, since the intent is to provide good service and not to discriminate? Answer: this would not be allowable because it is a form of segregation based on national origin. The pantry needs to accommodate people whenever they need assistance. The pantry could advertise days on which it has interpreters on site, but people who speak a particular language cannot be required to come only on certain days. Disability accommodations. Ensure access for people with disabilities. Parking lot, entrances and exits, halls, elevators, restrooms, sign language interpreters, braille signage, service animals. Alternative arrangements for service. Check ADA guidelines for specifics, and here is the website for ADA. People with disabilities should also be able to access your programs like anyone else. We recommend you keep a written plan for how your agency will accommodate disabilities. If you need a template, your Second Harvest Heartland account specialist can provide you with one, and it's also available on Agency Zone. Equal opportunity for religious organizations. USDA regulations at 7 CFR 16 require equal opportunity for faith-based organizations, FBOs, and community-based organizations, CBOs. Conduct outreach to FBOs and CBOs to become providers. The next few slides have to do with the way in which we partner with religious organizations and community organizations at Second Harvest Heartland. Discrimination is prohibited against an organization on the basis of religion, religious belief, or character in the distribution of funds. Faith-based organizations can use space in their facilities without removing religious art or symbols. At Second Harvest, we should be treating all our agency partners fairly, including the many, many faith-based organizations who are our partners. Beneficiaries are also protected. No organization that receives direct assistance from the USDA can discriminate against a beneficiary or prospective beneficiary on the basis of religion or religious belief. Faith-based organizations retain their independence and carry out their mission as long as USDA funds or activities do not support worship, religious instruction, or proselytization. So in turn, faith-based organizations must treat all their clients fairly and cannot discriminate against people from other religious groups or require them to participate in religious activities in order to get food. There is an exception. 7 CFR 16.3c provides that religious organizations that receive USDA assistance under the Richard B. Russell National School Lunch Act or USDA International School Feeding Programs may consider religion in their admissions practices and impose religious attendance or curricular requirements at their schools. There's always an exception to the rule, of course, but this one applies only to schools and school lunch programs. Here's a scenario at a faith-based organization. As part of its meal service, a soup kitchen wants to require a prayer before the meal. Is this allowable, and are there any exceptions or special requirements? Answer. As a rule, proselytization is prohibited under the faith-based rules. However, a prayer may be said before a meal, but the person conducting the activity must make it clear that 1, the activity is not part of TFAP and not endorsed by USDA or Second Harvest Heartland. 2, cooperation and participation in the activity is not a condition of receipt of TFAP benefits or other food benefits. And 3, the activity is not conducted in a manner that disrupts TFAP commodity distribution or meal service. Public notification, outreach, communication. People need to know about TFAP and know their rights. Underserved populations need special attention and special efforts. Market your program and the fact that it does not discriminate. The next few slides have to do with public notification, which is another requirement if you distribute TFAP. It's also a best practice for any emergency food program. Public notification is not just about putting up signs, but also doing outreach to people who may not be aware of your program. I always wonder when someone tells me that clients find out about their program, quote, by word of mouth. Who are they missing? Who is out there needing their services and has no way to find out about them? Market your program. Contact community groups and advocacy groups. Display the And Justice for All poster. Include the required non-discrimination statement on all appropriate food and nutrition service and agency publications, websites, posters, and informational materials. Convey the message of equal opportunity in all photos and other graphics that are used to provide program or program-related information. So make sure that your clients know their rights and know how to make a complaint by posting the information where they can see it. Make sure they understand that this is an equal opportunity program. Conduct outreach to underserved groups. Use special formats to reach disabled. Use other languages to reach people with limited English proficiency. Be creative. TV, radio, posters, flyers, supermarket bulletin boards, local clubs, libraries, schools, special events, fairs, mailings, internet, website links, etc. More and more, Second Harvest is looking at who is underserved in our communities. Sometimes this will mean doing additional outreach and even advertising. Make sure you're targeting your message to the people who really need to see it. If you're concerned that this will start to bring in more people than you think you have the capacity to serve, contact your Second Harvest account specialist and we'll work with you to help you find additional resources. Here's the latest non-discrimination statement that should be used in your written or published materials in most cases if your agency distributes TFAP. The U.S. Department of Agriculture prohibits discrimination against its customers, employees, and applicants for employment on the basis of race, color, national origin, age, disability, sex, gender identity, religion, reprisal, and where applicable, political beliefs, marital status, familial or parental status, sexual orientation, or all or part of an individual's income is derived from any public assistance program, or protected genetic information in employment or in any program or activity conducted or funded by the department. Not all prohibited bases will apply to all programs and or employment activities. If you wish to file a civil rights program complaint of discrimination, complete the USDA Program Discrimination Complaint Form found online at this website or at any USDA office, or call 866-632-9992 to request the form. You may also write a letter containing all of the information requested in the form. Send your completed complaint form or letter to us by mail at U.S. Department of Agriculture, Director, Office of Adjudication, 1400 Independence Avenue Southwest, Washington, D.C., 20250-9410, by fax 202-690-7442, or email at program.intake@usda.gov. Individuals who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have speech disabilities may contact USDA through the Federal Relay Service at 800-877-8339 or 800-845-6136 Spanish. USDA is an equal opportunity employer. Non-discrimination statement short version. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. May be used where the longer statement does not fit, must be in font size no smaller than font size used in the rest of the publication. Should not be used where information on rights is provided. Then you need to use the long version. In limited cases, you can use this short version of the statement, but if you're including information on client rights, you must use the long version. On websites, include the long statement or a link to it on websites that discuss food and nutrition service funded programs on the home page at a minimum. Include the long or short statement on materials intended to be printed off the website. So it should be used on websites. Here's situation number 5. A state prints an informational brochure about TFAP in another language. Since the non-discrimination statement is very technical and very long, and the population is not well educated, it is felt there is no need to include it. Also, it would take up way too much space. Is this decision correct? Why or why not? I'm sure you got this one, right? Answer. The non-discrimination statement needs to be translated and put on the brochure. The shorter statement could be used if it is in a font size the same as the rest of the print in the brochure. If the brochure contains information on rights and responsibilities, the longer statement should be used. Assurances required to receive federal assistance. No discrimination based on any of the protected classes listed in the non-discrimination statement. Program will be operated in compliance with all non-discrimination laws, regulations, instructions, policies, and guidelines. Compile data, maintain records, submit reports, allow reviews, and access. Again, here is a review of the civil rights expectations under our partnership with your agency. Good civil rights practices, good record keeping and reporting, responsiveness when we need to see your site, and review your program. Training. People involved in all levels of administration of programs that receive federal financial assistance, this means TFAP, need to understand civil rights related laws, regulations, procedures, and directives. Frontline staff who interact with program applicants or participants and supervisors of frontline staff must receive annual training. So who needs to have civil rights training? Staff or key volunteers who are administering the program, staff and volunteers who are interacting with clients. Training continued. Persons responsible for reviewing civil rights compliance need special training to perform review responsibilities. States and local agencies have flexibility in how to provide training. Classroom, online, staff meeting, etc. are all possibilities. This slide applies to us at Second Harvest Heartland. All agency relations staff receive annual civil rights training by the Minnesota Department of Human Services. In turn, we provide civil rights training to our partner agencies. This training is included in agency orientation sessions, can be done at networking meetings, one-on-one during a site visit, presented to a group of staff or volunteers at your agency by arrangement, and is available on our Agency Zone website. Certain topics must be covered: collection and use of data, effective public notification systems, complaint procedures, compliance review techniques, resolution of noncompliance, reasonable accommodation of persons with disabilities, language assistance, conflict resolution, and customer service. Here are all the different areas covered under civil rights training. So why do we ask that you train all your volunteers, and does every volunteer at your agency need civil rights training? Situation number 6. Most of the people who work with a local TFAP site are volunteers. Do they need to be trained? And if so, why do they need to know about compliance review techniques and data collection? Answer. Any frontline workers, including volunteers, need to be trained when they first come on the job and then annually. They may not need in-depth information on compliance techniques and data collection, but they need to know that these are requirements. Frontline volunteers, that is, those who interact directly with clients, must have annual civil rights training, and they should at least be aware that your agency undergoes biannual reviews, collects specific data, and reports that to Second Harvest and others. Data collection and reporting. See Census Quick Facts at this website for information by county for each state. See Census Bureau website for other data that are available. Data are a starting point. There is a need to know communities to properly interpret and apply data. So here are a couple of websites where you can look up census data for your area. I would also encourage you to look at the community close-up data that was gathered by Hunger Free Minnesota to show areas where there are still gaps in emergency food service. In other words, where families are still missing meals on a regular basis. Your account specialist can help you locate this information. Here's a test of your knowledge on data privacy. The leader of a charitable organization that makes large donations to the operations of a food pantry requests a list of all Hispanic participants so they can be given special holiday baskets. Does this pose any civil rights problems? And how should you respond to this request? Answer: this poses a number of problems. First, it would violate the confidentiality provisions of data collection. Data on ethnicity and race must be kept confidential and should not be made available on an individual basis. Answer continued. Second, what this person proposes to do violates Title VI because the distribution would be limited to people based on national origin and would not be available to everyone. By complying with the request, the food pantry would be helping to discriminate, and this is not allowed. Compliance reviews: pre-award, post-award, and special. Check for non-discrimination and ensure civil rights requirements being followed. Conducted by state or federal staff or both. Second Harvest Heartland will conduct a site visit prior to an agency getting authorization for TFAP, and then we'll do biannual compliance reviews of all our partners, including those who distribute TFAP. In addition, the staff at the Minnesota Department of Human Services Office of Economic Opportunity will visit a certain proportion of TFAP sites on an annual basis. If they have scheduled a visit to your program and you need or want assistance in preparing for their visit, feel free to contact your account specialist for help in reviewing TFAP requirements or accessing resources like forms and templates. Resolution of noncompliance. Corrective actions. Cease inappropriate actions. Institute appropriate procedures. Failure or refusal can result in loss of federal assistance from all federal sources. Since the main goal for Second Harvest and the Minnesota Department of Human Services is to ensure that TFAP is distributed fairly to all eligible clients, our first step will be to work with you to ensure compliance around TFAP requirements. That way the clients can continue to be served by your agency. However, if an agency simply refuses to make any necessary corrections, they could potentially lose not only their TFAP allocation, but any and all federal assistance. Complaints. Be aware of the bases for which complaints may be filed. And again, here are all the protected classes from the latest non-discrimination statement. Never discourage groups or individuals from filing complaints or from voicing allegations of discrimination. Know where to file a complaint, including with the USDA. Food and Nutrition Service Instruction 113.1 outlines complaint investigation procedures. Clients should always have a clear and simple process whereby they can make a complaint. Sometimes they will call Second Harvest about a program they feel has discriminated against them. They can also file a grievance at other levels, the Minnesota Department of Human Services, the USDA, etc. All complaints will be investigated. Our hope is that your clients will also feel comfortable bringing perceived problems directly to you. To file a complaint, complainants may write to USDA Director, Office of Adjudication and Compliance at this address and this phone number. Individuals who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have speech disabilities may contact USDA through the Federal Relay Service in English and in Spanish. Conflict resolution. Have a written and posted policy for dealing with unacceptable behavior and conflicts. Try to remain calm. Try to explain the situation. Get help, especially if threats or if violence is possible. Use alternative dispute resolution or ADR techniques. I've encountered a couple of different food shelves that have found they needed to create a written code of conduct for their clients after some problems arose. One of my favorite rules was, quote, clients shall wear clothing at all times in the food shelf and no exposure of private body parts will be tolerated, end quote. I find it both funny and sad that there seemed to be a need for this rule. It's best if you try to come up with a written set of rules ahead of time. Be sure to focus on the behavior and not any particular characteristics of the person. For example, if you know one of your clients struggles with alcohol or drug use, you might be certain they are high when they come into the food shelf, but as long as they're behaving appropriately and not disturbing or threatening anyone, you should try to serve them anyway. On the other hand, if you ever feel your personal safety or the safety of any of your clients, staff, or volunteers is threatened by someone's behavior, you're fully entitled to make them leave the premises or even call the police if the situation calls for it. Here's another scenario. Someone comes to the food pantry smelling of alcohol, speaks in a loud voice using language laced with profanities. You ask security to remove this person from the premises, and the person accuses you of discrimination and threatens to complain. What should you do? Answer. Ideally, you would have a policy that outlines unacceptable behavior and penalties, and you ensure that it is enforced uniformly. You could give the person a copy of the policy and also provide information on how to file a complaint. And if you cannot safely give them the information at the time, try to get it to them as soon as possible or provide it to a family member who can give it to them. Your rules, code of conduct, or policies should be posted along with the grievance procedure where clients can see them. Customer service. Treat others the way they want to be treated, or at least be aware of what that is. Be patient, be polite, avoid sarcasm, be empathetic. Understand that people may not know the rules or understand how programs work. They may feel uncomfortable coming to ask for help. Smile when appropriate. Make people feel welcome and valued. Explain policy and let them know you'll get in trouble if you do anything that violates the rules. Don't be afraid to apologize. Don't feel you need to have the last word. So here are some tips for good customer service and conflict resolution. The last two are my favorites. Sometimes just saying I'm sorry goes a long way, even if you've been running your program fairly and as best you can. It can help people to know you're sympathetic to their concerns and let them have the last word in the discussion. It's okay if they want to say, well, I still wish you would get that name brand cereal instead. I just don't like the generic stuff. And now, as your humble narrator, I will turn over the last word to my manager, Kate Burgraff, who's just joined us. I hope you found this information useful. If you have any additional questions about civil rights or other aspects of your partnership with Second Harvest Heartland, you can contact your account specialist and they will be happy to help you.
Hello, I just want to thank you again for everyone who is either attending this in person today or viewing this as a recording. Thank you for taking time to learn about civil rights training and think about how you can implement it within your organization. There are just a few items that I'd like to share. As Lisa mentioned, my name is Kate Burgraff and I'm the Agency Relations Manager at Second Harvest Heartland. And I just wanted to encourage you to remember these items as you go forward. First off, civil rights training is a required annual training. It's something that we all have to do each calendar year. And so if you did it this year, you will still need to do it next year. We will do it on our end as well. Also, all frontline staff and volunteers must receive some form of civil rights training. And so just as a reminder, frontline staff or volunteers are anyone within your organization that are interacting with clients directly. So that might be volunteers or staff that are doing an intake with volunteers or distributing food directly to them. That civil rights training may take place in a number of forms, but it has to happen in some way. Finally, it's important to remember that civil rights training is required at all levels, and so this isn't an expectation that is just placed on you at your organization. But the USDA requires that the state office, so State Department of Human Services and OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity, are trained on an annual basis as well. And then those individuals train Second Harvest Heartland staff. As Lisa mentioned, all agency relations staff at Second Harvest Heartland are trained on an annual basis as well. So then we provide that training to you as TFAP eligible programs or agency partners of Second Harvest Heartland. And so this training will be available on an annual basis and then as a recording throughout the year. And then it is your responsibility to train your frontline staff and volunteers. And that can be done in a number of ways. You can either use this recording if that would be helpful. There are also checklists for you to use and talking points if that would work the best within your organization. And as a reminder, I would encourage you to contact your account specialist at Second Harvest if we can help with that training in any way or help you think through how you can implement it. Finally, since we do need to provide written documentation that we have gone through this training, there's just a reminder that all TFAP paperwork should be kept on file for 7 years per the Minnesota state requirements. So when we go out for a site visit and visit you at your location, we'll be asking to see your current civil rights training that you should have on file. Finally, we just want to thank you very much for participating in this webinar. Thank you to Lisa Boyd for leading us through the slides. And hopefully if you have any other questions, you can contact your account specialist here at Second Harvest and we can help support that to you.